The airport never slept. Even at dawn, Terminal C was alive, rolling suitcases thumping against tiled floors, children whining from exhaustion, business travelers glued to their phones, and announcements echoing like a heartbeat through the building. Final boarding call for flight a Z-907 to New York. The words floated through the air, urgent yet routine. Most people rushed, but one girl didn't. She stood near gate 47, calm, composed, almost invisible in the chaos. Her name was Aaliyah Carter. She was 17. She wore a simple gray hoodie, black jeans, and worn-out sneakers. Her hair was pulled back neatly, no makeup, no jewelry except a thin silver chain resting quietly against her collarbone. Around her neck hung a pair of headphones, old, scratched, clearly not expensive. Nothing about her screamed money, nothing about her screamed power, and that was exactly the problem. Aaliyah watched people move past her, families, couples, solo travelers, each one scanning their boarding passes, each one carrying the weight of their own lives. She had flown before, many times, but today felt different. Her mother wasn't with her. Usually airports meant private lounges, polite smiles, quiet efficiency. Today it was just her, alone, in a public terminal, no assistant. No introductions, exactly how she wanted it. She checked her boarding pass again. Group 1, business class. She took a slow breath. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Never announce who you are. Let people show you who they are first. Aaliyah believed in that lesson. The boarding line grew longer. People grew impatient. At the front of the line stood the gate agent, a woman in her late 40s, stiff posture, perfectly pressed uniform, and eyes trained to scan for mistakes. She smiled for some passengers, not for all. Aaliyah stepped forward when her group was called. She hadn't taken more than 2 steps when a sharp voice cut through the noise. "Hey, stop!" Aaliyah paused. The gate agent raised a hand, palm out, as if stopping traffic. "Yes," Aaliyah asked politely. The agent looked her up and down, not quickly, slowly, from her shoes to her hoodie to her face. Then she sighed, the kind of sigh that carried judgment. "This line is for priority passengers," the agent said. "Economy boards later." Aaliyah blinked once. "I am priority," she replied, calm but clear, extending her boarding pass. The agent didn't take it. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, lips tightening. "No, you're not," she said. "Please move to the side." Behind Aaliyah, someone groaned. A man muttered, "Come on, we're late." Aaliyah turned slightly, uncomfortable but composed. "I think there's a misunderstanding," she said. "My boarding group is—" The agent cut her off. "Miss, don't argue, I do this all day." Her tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was dismissive, practiced. Aaliyah felt heat crawl up her spine. She glanced around. A white teenage boy, maybe her age, wearing designer sneakers and an expensive jacket, walked past her from the sideline. The agent smiled at him. "Go ahead, sweetie." His pass scanned without question. Aaliyah watched him walk down the jet bridge. Something tightened in her chest. "Why was he allowed to go?" Aaliyah asked quietly. The agent's smile disappeared. "That's not your concern." People stared now. Aaliyah could feel it, the subtle shift. Curiosity, judgment, suspicion. She had felt this before, at stores, at hotels, at places where people decided who belonged based on appearance. She straightened her shoulders. "I just want to board my flight," she said. The agent leaned closer, lowering her voice. "And I want you to stop holding up my line." Her finger tapped the counter. "Step aside." For the first time, Aaliyah felt something crack inside her calm. Not anger, disappointment. Her mother was right. People showed you who they were when they thought you had no power. Aaliyah looked at her boarding pass again. It was valid. It was clear, and yet here she was standing still while others moved forward. She thought of calling her mother. One phone call would end this, but she didn't. She wanted to see how far this would go. She stepped closer to the scanner. "I'd like you to scan my pass," she said. The agent's eyes hardened. "Miss," she said sharply, "if you don't step away right now, I will call security." The word hung in the air. Security. The terminal seemed to quiet just slightly. Aaliyah's heart beat faster, not because she was afraid, but because she knew something was about to change. She looked the agent straight in the eyes. "Scan it," she said. The agent hesitated, just for a second. And in that second, the power shifted. Reluctantly, with visible irritation, the agent snatched the boarding pass and placed it on the scanner. Aaliyah held her breath. The machine made a sound, beep, and the screen began to change. The scanner beeped. Not loud, not dramatic, just a simple mechanical sound. But instead of turning green, the color everyone expected, the screen flickered, paused, and returned to its idle state. No approval, no rejection, just silence. The gate agent frowned. She scanned the pass again. Beep, nothing. She exhaled sharply, as if the failure confirmed something she already believed. "There," she said, turning the screen slightly away from Aaliyah. "I told you." System didn't accept it. Aaliyah stared at the scanner. "That doesn't mean it's invalid," she said carefully. "Sometimes it—" The agent cut her off. "I don't need a lesson on my own system." Her voice was louder now. Passengers nearby slowed down. Some stopped completely. The line behind Aaliyah stretched longer. Tension thickened the air. A middle-aged man rolled his eyes. "Can you just move already?" A woman whispered to her husband. "Why is she arguing?" Aaliyah felt every word land on her skin like dust, small, irritating, impossible to ignore. She looked back at the agent. "Can you try again?" she asked. The agent leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "No." That single word hit harder than shouting. Aaliyah's fingers curled around the strap of her backpack. "I'm not asking for special treatment," she said. "I just want you to scan it properly." The agent laughed softly, not amused but mocking. "You people always say that." The words slipped out before she could stop them. And the moment they did, something changed. Aaliyah felt it, so did everyone else. A silence spread through the nearby crowd, heavier than before. "You people," Aaliyah repeated quietly. The agent straightened. "Don't twist my words," she snapped. "You're creating a scene." Aaliyah's heart pounded now, not from fear, from humiliation, from the familiar sting of being reduced to a stereotype in a place where rules were supposed to be neutral. She took a step back, then stopped herself. No, she wouldn't retreat. "I paid for this seat," she said clearly. "I followed the rules. I'm not doing anything wrong." The agent slammed her palm on the desk. "That's enough." Heads turned. Conversation stopped. "You're disrupting boarding," the agent said loudly. "I warned you." She reached for the phone beside her monitor. "I'm calling security." The word echoed again. Security. Aaliyah's stomach tightened. Not because she feared them, but because she knew how these situations ended, how quickly calm turned into handcuffs, how easily stories changed once uniforms arrived. She glanced around. No one stepped forward. Not one person said she's right. Not one voice questioned the agent. They just watched, some with curiosity, some with irritation, some with quiet approval. A white couple stepped out of line and boarded smoothly while Aaliyah stood frozen in place. Invisible yet painfully visible, the agent spoke into the phone. "Yes, I have an uncooperative passenger refusing to step aside." Uncooperative. Aaliyah almost laughed. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't cursed, hadn't broken any rule. She was just standing where she belonged. "Security is on the way," the agent announced, looking satisfied. Aaliyah swallowed hard. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from her mother. "Boarding yet." Aaliyah stared at the screen. One reply could end everything. She typed, then erased. She slid the phone back into her pocket. Not yet. She needed to know. The line behind her had grown restless. A young woman sighed loudly. "This is ridiculous," a man muttered. "They should have stopped her earlier." Aaliyah felt the weight of their impatience press down on her chest. She imagined how this looked to them. A black teenage girl holding up a flight full of paying passengers. Not a victim, a problem. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall. Tears changed the narrative. Tears made you weak. She lifted her chin. "I'm not moving," she said calmly. "Scan the pass again." Properly, the agent stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Excuse me, you heard me." Aaliyah stepped forward and placed the boarding pass directly on the scanner herself. The agent gasped. "Don't touch that." Too late. Beep. This time the system reacted differently. The screen went dark, then bright, then gold, not yellow, not amber. Gold, the kind that shimmered. Lines of text began to populate the screen rapidly, faster than the agent could read. The agent's mouth fell open. Her hand froze midair. "What?" she whispered. Passengers leaned forward. The whispers returned. "Is that gold? Why is it flashing? I've never seen that before." Aaliyah watched the reflection of the screen in the agent's glasses. She knew that color. She'd seen it her whole life. The system chimed again, louder now. VIP alert activated. The agent's face drained of color. Her fingers trembled as she tried to click away the screen, but it wouldn't disappear. The gold stayed, bright, unforgiving, impossible to ignore. Aaliyah exhaled slowly. The balance had shifted, and everyone could feel it. The gold screen refused to fade. It pulsed softly, almost alive, casting a warm glow across the gate counter, a glow that felt completely out of place in the cold, fluorescent terminal. The gate agent stared at it as if it were a living thing. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. What is this?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The system chimed again, a deeper, authoritative tone this time. "VIP Elite Lifetime Clearance Executive Protocol Initiated Delay Not Permitted." The words were unmistakable. Not to Aaliyah, but to the agent. Her hands began to shake. "No, no, no," she muttered, clicking furiously, trying to close the window, trying to pretend it wasn't there. But the system didn't allow it. Instead, a red banner appeared at the top of the screen. "Supervisor NOTIFIED." The agent froze. Her eyes darted toward Aaliyah, not with anger anymore, not with dismissal, but with something new. Fear. The murmurs around them grew louder. "I told you she wasn't lying. Is she some kind of celebrity? That's not a normal ticket." A man who had complained earlier suddenly cleared his throat and looked away. The woman who whispered, "This is ridiculous," now stared at Aaliyah with wide eyes. The narrative had shifted. Aaliyah felt it. She stood straighter, not out of pride, but because she no longer had to shrink. The agent finally found her voice. I just need a moment, she said quickly, her tone completely transformed. There seems to be a system error. Aaliyah tilted her head slightly. A system error? She repeated calmly. Yes, the agent said, forcing a tight smile. Sometimes these things happen. Aaliyah glanced at the gold screen. Funny, she said softly. It looks very sure of itself. A few passengers snorted despite themselves. The agent shot them a sharp look, then turned back to Aaliyah. Please, she said, lowering her voice. If you could just step aside for a moment. No, Aaliyah replied. The word landed clean and firm. I've been stepping aside since I got here. The agent swallowed. You don't understand, she whispered urgently. This is above me. Aaliyah met her eyes. That's been clear from the beginning. The gold screen pulsed again. Another chime, this one louder. Across the terminal, heads turned. The agent's radio crackled at her hip. Gate 47, supervisor en route. Her breath hitched. She hadn't expected that. She had expected security. She had expected to be backed up. Instead, the system had bypassed her completely. Aaliyah noticed the shift instantly. Security never came when power entered the room. Only management did. The agent tried to regain control. Everyone please remain calm, she announced, voice shaky. Boarding is temporarily paused. A groan rippled through the crowd. Paused, not because of Aaliyah, but because of her. Aaliyah looked around. People weren't annoyed at her anymore. They were curious, measuring, reevaluating. The same people who had rolled their eyes were now avoiding eye contact. The white teenage boy who boarded earlier glanced back down the jet bridge, confusion written on his face. Aaliyah caught his eye. He looked away quickly. The agent leaned closer again, desperate now. Miss Carter, she said, reading the name from the screen for the first time. Hearing it out loud felt different, personal. I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding, the agent said. If you'll just allow me to escort you. No, Aaliyah said again, still calm. Her voice never rose. I want you to explain something first. The agent nodded rapidly. Of course, anything. Aaliyah gestured toward the line. Why was I told to step aside, she asked. When my pass was valid. The agent opened her mouth, closed it. I made a mistake. Aaliyah didn't blink. And why, she continued, was I threatened with security? The agent's face flushed. That was unnecessary. Unnecessary. The word felt small. Aaliyah took a breath. Say it properly, she said. The agent hesitated. Then very quietly, she said, I assumed you didn't belong here. The terminal went silent, not awkward silence, heavy silence, the kind that pressed against your ears. Aaliyah nodded slowly. Thank you, she said. That's all I needed. Footsteps echoed from behind the counter. Sharp, purposeful. A man in a dark suit approached, his badge marked Senior Operations Manager. The agent turned pale. What seems to be the issue? He asked, voice controlled, eyes already scanning the gold-lit screen. The moment he read it, his posture changed. Instantly. Why is this passenger still standing here? He asked, his tone no longer neutral. The agent stammered. I didn't realize. The manager raised a hand. Stop. He turned to Aaliyah. Miss Carter, he said respectfully. I'm very sorry for the delay. Passengers gasped softly. The agent looked like she might collapse. Aaliyah met the manager's eyes. I'd like to understand, she said, why I was treated like a problem. The manager glanced at the agent, then back at Aaliyah, and for the first time since this began, someone with authority listened. Please, he said, walk with me. Aaliyah nodded. As she stepped forward, the gold screen flashed one final message. Executive escort required. The agent stared at it, knowing, deep down, that this moment would follow her for the rest of her career. And Aaliyah, she walked forward calmly, because she had never needed permission to belong. The moment Aaliyah stepped away from the counter, the terminal felt different, not quieter, heavier. The kind of heaviness that settles when people realize they've been wrong, and there's no way to rewind it. The Senior Operations Manager, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a posture shaped by years of control rooms and crisis meetings, walked beside her. He didn't rush, he didn't smile, he didn't need to. Behind them, the gate agent remained frozen at her station, eyes glued to the screen still glowing gold. She hadn't closed it, she couldn't. Her hands hovered uselessly above the keyboard. The manager stopped a few steps away from the counter and turned. Resume boarding, he said calmly. The agent blinked. I can't, she stammered. The system, I know exactly what the system says, he replied. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Resume boarding for all remaining passengers. I'll handle this. She nodded rapidly, relief and terror mixing in her expression. As she began waving passengers forward, her movements were clumsy, rushed, the confidence she'd worn earlier gone completely. Aaliyah watched quietly. People boarded again, but now they avoided her gaze. The same passengers who had sighed, complained, whispered, now they looked at her like she was a mirror they didn't want to face. The manager gestured toward a small glass-walled office beside the gate. Miss Carter, if you don't mind. Aaliyah followed him inside. The door closed. The noise of the terminal dulled. Inside, the office was minimal: a desk, 2 chairs, a monitor showing live gate operations. The manager turned to face her fully now. "First," he said, "I want to apologize." He didn't rush it. "I've reviewed the alert," he continued, "and I've reviewed the interaction logs." Aaliyah raised an eyebrow slightly. "You log interactions?" "Yes," he said. "Everything," she nodded. "That's good." The manager studied her carefully, not her clothes, not her age, her composure. "You handled that situation with more restraint than many adults I've dealt with," he said. "Especially under pressure." Aaliyah clasped her hands in front of her. "I didn't want special treatment," she said. "I wanted fairness." He sighed. "And that's exactly why this is serious." He turned the monitor toward her. On the screen was her profile, not a boarding pass, not a seat number, a status page, highlighted in gold. Carter, AALIYH VIP Elite, Lifetime Executive Family Clearance Board Override, Authorized Escalation Level. Max, the manager, pointed at the last line. "When this activates," he explained, "it bypasses gate authority, security protocol, and customer service chains." Aaliyah looked at it calmly. "I know," that surprised him. "You do? My mother explained it when I was 12, she said. "She said it's not for convenience, it's for protection." The manager nodded slowly. "She was right." He leaned back slightly. "When the system flashes gold, it means one thing," he said. "Someone with influence serious enough to affect the airline's operations is being mishandled." Aaliyah met his gaze. "And today," she said quietly, "that was me." "Yes," he replied, "and it should never have happened." Outside the glass walls, the gate agent kept glancing toward the office. Every glance made her shoulders tense. The manager noticed. "Her?" Aaliyah asked. "Yes," he said. "She's been with the airline 12 years. Aaliyah said nothing. "That doesn't excuse anything," he added quickly. "Length of service doesn't justify bias." Bias, the word hung in the air. Aaliyah folded her arms. "She decided I didn't belong before I spoke," she said, "before she scanned my pass." The manager nodded once. "That's what concerns me most." He tapped the desk. "This wasn't a procedural error," he said. "It was a judgment." Aaliyah looked at him. "What happens now?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked back at the screen. "Normally," he said carefully, "this would trigger an internal investigation, mandatory retraining. Suspension pending review." Aaliyah tilted her head. "Normally," he met her eyes, "but given the level of escalation and the public nature of what happened," he paused. "This becomes a corporate issue." Outside, a few passengers whispered, pointing subtly toward the office. Phones were out now, not openly, but enough. The manager noticed that too. "This will be reported," he said. "If not officially, then socially." Aaliyah's expression remained unreadable. "I don't want revenge," she said. He believed her. "I want accountability," she continued. "So the next girl doesn't have to stand there and feel small." The manager nodded slowly. "That," he said, "is exactly what this system was designed to protect." He stood. "Before you board," he added, "there's one thing you should know." Aaliyah waited. "This alert," he said, "doesn't activate for every VIP." She raised an eyebrow. "It activates for ownership-level connections." Outside the office, the gate agent's knees nearly buckled as she overheard fragments through the glass. "Ownership." Aaliyah exhaled softly. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to that," she said. The manager opened the door. "Miss Carter," he said formally, "when you're ready, I will personally escort you onto the aircraft." As they stepped back into the terminal, the gold screen behind the counter updated one final time. "Escort confirmed, override complete." The agent stared at it. Her reflection stared back. And for the first time, she understood. This wasn't about a boarding pass. It was about everything she had assumed, and the consequences were just beginning. The moment Aaliyah stepped back into the terminal beside the senior operations manager, the air changed again. Not tense this time, uneasy. People sensed it, the shift from drama to consequence. Whispers traveled faster than announcements. "Did you see the screen? That was gold. I've never seen gold." They escorted her. Phones were angled discreetly now. Screens lit up behind backpacks, inside jacket sleeves. No one wanted to be obvious, but no one wanted to miss it either. The gate agent felt it more than anyone. She stood stiff behind the counter, scanning passes mechanically, her earlier sharpness completely gone. Her eyes kept drifting toward Aaliyah, not in anger, not in judgment, but in panic. Her confidence had evaporated. Each beep of the scanner now sounded like a countdown. The manager stopped a few feet away from the counter. "Continue boarding," he said calmly. The agent nodded too quickly. "Yes, of course." Aaliyah stood to the side, silent. No VIP rope, no loud apology, just presence. Passengers passed her now with lowered eyes. The man who had complained earlier cleared his throat and mumbled, "Sorry," as he walked by. Aaliyah acknowledged him with a small nod, nothing more. She didn't need their apologies. She needed their awareness. The manager spoke again, low but firm. I need you to log out of the system, he told the agent. The agent's fingers froze. Sir, now. She swallowed hard and did as instructed. The gold interface vanished from her screen. But its impact remained. Please hand me your badge, the manager continued. Her breath hitched. Is this necessary? She asked, voice trembling. Yes. Passengers nearby pretended not to listen. Everyone listened. She unclipped the badge slowly and placed it on the counter. The sound it made was soft, but final. The manager pocketed it. Human resources will contact you within 24 hours, he said. For now, you're relieved from duty. The agent's face drained of color. I've worked here 12 years, she whispered. The manager's expression didn't change. And today, he replied, you forgot why. Aaliyah watched quietly. She felt no triumph, only a deep, sobering sadness. The agent gathered her things slowly, clumsily, avoiding eye contact with everyone. As she walked away from the gate, her shoulders slumped, not because she had been caught, but because she had been exposed. The boarding line moved smoothly now, too smoothly, as if everyone was afraid to cause the slightest disruption. Aaliyah stood alone again, but this time the space around her felt different, respectful. The manager turned to her. Miss Carter, he said, we're ready whenever you are, she nodded. But before moving, she looked back at the gate, at the place where she had stood, ignored and humiliated. At the spot where judgment had outweighed policy. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. What happens next? She asked. For her, the manager considered the question. There will be an investigation, he said. Her actions will be reviewed against company values. And if this happens again? Aaliyah asked. He met her eyes. It won't, he said. Not quietly. Aaliyah took a breath. Good. They walked toward the jet bridge. As they passed, conversation stopped. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve and whispered, "Why was that lady crying?" The mother hesitated, then said softly, "Because she judged someone without knowing them." Aaliyah smiled faintly. At the entrance to the jet bridge, the manager paused. "I want you to know," he said, "you didn't just change one situation today." She looked at him. "You triggered a review of our boarding protocols nationwide." That surprised her. "All because of one gate?" she asked. "No," he replied, "because of one decision." They stepped onto the jet bridge. Behind them, the terminal resumed its rhythm, announcements, footsteps, rolling luggage, but something lingered, an awareness. Aaliyah walked slowly, her footsteps echoing against the narrow walls. Halfway down the bridge, she stopped. The manager turned. "Is something wrong?" She shook her head. "No," she said. "I was just thinking about how many times this happened before me," she said, and nothing flashed gold. The manager had no answer. She continued walking, and with every step toward the aircraft, one truth became clearer. This wasn't about status. It was about who got believed and who didn't until the system forced the truth into the open. At the aircraft door, a flight attendant waited, smiling warmly. "Welcome aboard, Miss Carter." Aaliyah stepped inside. But the story, it wasn't over yet. The aircraft door closed behind Aaliyah with a soft, hollow sound. For the first time since she arrived at the airport, the noise disappeared. No announcements, no murmurs, no judgmental eyes, just a narrow aisle, soft lighting, and the gentle hum of an aircraft preparing for flight. A flight attendant gestured toward her seat, 2A, window side. Aaliyah thanked her quietly and slid into the seat. She placed her backpack under the seat in front of her, rested her hands on her lap, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Not a deep breath, just a real one. The kind you don't take when you're being watched. She looked out the window. Ground crew moved with mechanical precision. Orange vests, hand signals, routine. Everything looked normal again, but she didn't feel normal. Her phone buzzed. She already knew who it was. Mom Aaliyah stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. "Yes," she said softly. There was a pause on the other end, then a familiar voice, calm, controlled, but carrying the weight of 1,000 boardrooms. "Are you seated?" "Yes." Another pause. "Did anything happen?" Aaliyah closed her eyes. A lot had happened, but she didn't rush the answer. "Yes," she said finally. The silence on the other end deepened. "Tell me," her mother said, not urgently. Not angrily, just ready. Aaliyah described it slowly, the gate, the agent, the line, the assumptions, the threat of security. She didn't exaggerate, she didn't dramatize, she didn't need to. Her mother listened without interrupting. When Aaliyah mentioned the gold screen, her mother exhaled sharply. "I hoped you'd never see that activate," she said. "I know," Aaliyah replied. "You warned me." Her mother's voice softened. "And yet you handled it exactly the way I taught you." Aaliyah looked out the window again. "I didn't want to use it," she said. "I wanted to see if people would do the right thing without it." Her mother sighed. "And now you know the answer." Aaliyah swallowed. "Yes." There was a brief silence. Then her mother spoke again, quieter now. "You know why I don't travel with you publicly," she said. Aaliyah nodded, even though her mother couldn't see it. "Because power makes people behave differently," Aaliyah replied, "and not always better." "That," her mother said, "is exactly why." Aaliyah shifted in her seat. Mom, she asked, how many people work for the airline? Tens of thousands, her mother replied. Across continents, and how many of them have stood where I stood today? Aaliyah asked. Her mother didn't answer immediately. Too many, she said finally. Aaliyah closed her eyes again. That's why I didn't want you calling anyone, she said. I wanted it logged. Her mother's voice changed, pride unmistakable. It was, she said. The alert reached headquarters before you reached the jet bridge. Aaliyah raised an eyebrow. That fast? Yes, her mother replied. Because when gold flashes, it doesn't just protect the passenger. What does it protect? Aaliyah asked. It protects the truth, her mother said. Aaliyah sat quietly with that. The captain's voice came over the intercom, welcoming passengers and announcing a slight delay. The words washed over her. Routine again. But beneath that routine, something had shifted. Her mother spoke once more. There will be consequences, she said, not just for the agent. Aaliyah listened. We're initiating bias audits across boarding operations, her mother continued. Training isn't enough anymore. Aaliyah felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. I don't want people to lose their jobs, she said. I know, her mother replied gently, but I want them to learn that their decisions carry weight. Aaliyah nodded. Power shouldn't feel invisible to those who need protection, her mother added. But it shouldn't be loud either. Aaliyah smiled faintly. You always say that. Her mother chuckled softly. Because it's true. There was another pause, then her mother asked, Are you okay? Aaliyah thought about it. The humiliation. The silence of the crowd. The sudden respect. I will be, she said. That's my girl. They ended the call. Aaliyah placed the phone face down and leaned her head back against the seat. Around her, other passengers settled in, fastening seatbelts, opening magazines, sipping water. None of them knew who she was, and that was exactly how she liked it. A flight attendant approached quietly. Miss Carter, she said softly, if there's anything you need, please let me know. Aaliyah smiled politely. Thank you, she said. I'm fine. As the plane began to push back from the gate, Aaliyah looked out the window one last time. Gate 47 faded into the distance, but the lesson stayed. Gold didn't make her important. It made the truth impossible to ignore. And somewhere in the terminal, policies were already being rewritten because one quiet girl had refused to disappear. By the time flight Z-907 reached cruising altitude, the story had already begun to move. Not loudly, not publicly, but efficiently. In a glass-walled conference room thousands of miles away, a red notification blinked on a large digital screen. Executive escalation, Gate 47, confirmed. A group of senior executives sat around the table. Some had coffee untouched in front of them. Others scrolled quietly through reports on their tablets. A woman at the head of the table, calm, composed, unmistakably authoritative, looked at the summary once. Then again, she didn't need details. She already knew who it involved. Proceed, she said simply. Across departments, systems activated, not dramatic ones, administrative ones. Logs were pulled, audio was reviewed, camera footage was flagged. Every second Aaliyah had stood at that gate was now frozen in data. Back at the airport, the gate agent sat alone in a small, windowless room. Her uniform jacket lay folded on the table in front of her. Her badge was gone. She stared at her hands, hands that had waved people forward without hesitation, hands that had stopped one girl with certainty. She replayed it over and over, the hoodie, the calm voice, the way she had assumed. For 12 years she had believed she was fair, professional, efficient. Now she wasn't so sure. A human resources representative sat across from her, voice neutral, practiced. This is not a disciplinary hearing, she said. This is a fact-finding process. The agent nodded slowly. Do you understand why you're here? The agent hesitated, then spoke quietly. Yes, please explain why you denied boarding before scanning the passenger's pass. The agent swallowed. I thought she was in the wrong line. Based on what? Silence. The agent looked down. Appearance, she said finally. The word felt heavy, unavoidable. The HR representative typed without looking up. Outside that room, the terminal had already moved on. Flights departed. Announcements continued. People forgot, but not everyone. 2 passengers had posted short clips online. Nothing dramatic, just shaky footage of the gold screen, the sudden escort, the stunned faces. No names, no commentary, just captions. Never seen this before. Gate agent went quiet real fast. By evening, the clips had been stitched together. By night, the speculation began. Celebrity, politician's kid, airline owner, no one guessed correctly, and Aaliyah didn't correct them. She sat quietly in her seat, reading a book, unaware that the algorithm had already decided her story mattered. The next morning, internal memos went out. Mandatory bias training was updated. Boarding protocols were revised. Gate authority guidelines were clarified, not publicly, but thoroughly. The manager from Gate 47 received a call. Good handling, the voice on the other end said. You followed protocol, he exhaled. Thank you, he replied, but it shouldn't have reached that point. No, the voice agreed. And now it won't. As for the gate agent, the outcome wasn't instant. There was no dramatic firing, no public apology, just process. Days later, she received an email. Administrative leave pending review. She read it twice. Then sat quietly at her kitchen table long after her coffee went cold. She thought about her daughter, about the things she'd told her, about the lessons she thought she'd passed on. She opened her laptop and searched the phrase trending online. Gold VIP boarding incident. She didn't watch the videos. She didn't need to. She knew what they showed. Meanwhile, Aaliyah arrived in New York. She walked through the terminal unnoticed. No escort, no gold screen, no whispers. Just another traveler, and that was exactly the point. As she exited the airport, her phone buzzed again. A message from her mother. You did good. Aaliyah smiled, not because she'd won, but because something had changed, quietly, permanently. Sometimes the loudest impact came from the calmest voice. And sometimes, the real power wasn't in gold screens or executive alerts, but in refusing to accept silence as normal. New York woke up slowly that morning. Not because of headlines, not because of trending videos, but because the city always did. Aaliyah stood near the arrival's exit, her backpack slung over one shoulder, watching people reunite, hugs, smiles, hurried greetings. She paused for a moment, taking it all in. No one looked at her twice, and for the first time since Gate 47, that felt peaceful. She stepped outside into the cool air and pulled her hoodie tighter around herself. A car pulled up. The driver nodded politely. Miss Carter? Yes, she replied. As the car merged into traffic, the airport faded behind her, but the story didn't. 3 days later, the gate agent sat in the same small HR office, but this time it wasn't quiet. The review was complete, every clip watched, every word transcribed, every assumption documented. The HR director folded her hands. This decision is final, she said. The agent nodded, already knowing. You will not be returning to your position as a gate agent. The words landed heavily, not like a slap, but like a truth she couldn't argue with. This is not a termination, the director continued. It's a reassignment recommendation, contingent on retraining. The agent looked up. You're being offered a non-customer-facing role, she said, if you choose to accept. The agent swallowed. It wasn't what she'd planned for her career. But it was something. I understand, she said quietly. As she stood to leave, the director added one last thing. This wasn't about one mistake, she said. It was about a pattern you didn't know you had. The agent paused at the door. For the first time, she nodded, not in agreement, but in acceptance. Elsewhere at airline headquarters, a quiet change unfolded. Training modules were rewritten. Scenarios were updated. Real footage replaced hypothetical slides. Not with names, not with blame, but with a simple title. When assumptions override policy. No one mentioned Aaliyah, but everyone learned from her. Back in New York, Aaliyah sat in a small cafe near her hotel, sunlight streaming through the window. She stirred her drink absent-mindedly, watching people pass by outside. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her mother. Board meeting concluded. Changes approved. Aaliyah smiled faintly. She typed back, good, nothing more. She didn't need praise. She didn't need recognition. She needed peace. She thought back to the gate, the silence, the eyes, the moment when her existence became a problem. Then she thought about the gold screen. How quickly everything had changed, not because she yelled, not because she threatened, but because the system finally listened, and that bothered her more than anything else. She closed her eyes briefly. What about the girls who don't flash gold? What about the ones who never get escorted? That question stayed with her, and it always would. The final reflection power, Aaliyah realized, wasn't the gold screen. It wasn't ownership. It wasn't authority. Power was choice. The choice to stay calm when provoked. The choice to demand fairness without cruelty. The choice to let the truth speak louder than anger. At gate 47, she could have shouted. She could have cried. She could have called her mother immediately. But she didn't. She waited, and in that waiting she exposed something far bigger than herself. Final scene somewhere, another airport, another gate, another girl, different clothes, different face, same quiet confidence. A gate agent glanced at her boarding pass, paused, then smiled. Welcome aboard. No gold screen, no escalation, just respect. And that was the real victory. The end. Never judge a soul by how quietly they stand in line. Some people don't need to announce who they are, because who they are will eventually speak for itself.